Okay, hi everyone.
Hello everyone! Hello Lee,
Hi, hello.
kumusta?
Okay lang. Ikaw, Kirby, kamusta?
Okay naman, humihinga, buhay pa naman. Salamat sa
Ah,
Diyos.
yeah, that's good to hear. At least we're safe.
Oo. At hopefully ating mga manonood ngayon are safe din at ngayon ay safe sa kanilang mga pamamahay na nakikinig ngayon sa
Yes.
ating gaganap webinar.
Excited ka na ba?
Yes, napaka-excited ako Lee dahil alam mo naman alam ko marami tayong matututunan sa ating gaganaping event ngayon dahil sa ating mga bisita at sa mga experiences natin matutunan mula sa kanila.
And this is actually the first time na gagawin natin to sa page na to. Design Summit 2021,
Yes, that's true.
right?
This is our first time, yes. And hopefully it will not be the last.
Yes. Make sure natin yan.
No, so I guess everyone is tuned in for the same reason, and that is to learn. And we are lucky we are able to invite some of the great people in their respective fields to share some of their knowledge to help naman our aspiring artists, mapa-beginners o maging sino man na willing pa matuto ng karagdagang kaalaman. Right, Lay?
Yes, tama ka dyan, Kirby. And excited na din akong makilala ang ating mga speaker for today. So I think you need to turn on your camera, guys, para makilala kayo ng mga viewers natin.
Yes, turn on your
Wow!
camera sa makita nila yung mga beautiful faces.
How about si John Claire?
Check this. Hello.
Oh,
Ayan.
hi!
Ayan. So, hello
Ayan.
guys. Welcome sa ating Design Summit 2021. And thank you for sharing your time with us sa ating event. And alam ko mga busy people na kayo. At kahit lockdown ay meron tayong mga ginagawa kanya-kanya mga personal na bagay. At still lending us your time. Salamat, salamat.
Okay. So, I think i-introduce natin muna yung pinakaunang speaker natin for today. Excited na
Yes.
ako.
All right.
Excited na ba kayo
So,
makilala sila?
ako excited na ako.
Tubag,
Talaga.
tubag po mo, guys. Excited na ba kayo?
Opo.
Yes, we're
Sir.
very excited.
Yes. Okay, hi. Let's call Rowie. Hello, Rowie. Kamusta?
Hello sa inyong lahat. Ako pala si Roger Arsate. And yes, I'm here.
Yes, you're there.
Yes, you're there. So, yes, namin siyang Rowie. So, Rowie, what will the audience expect from you today?
They will expect creativity from me, of course. And also, they will expect some tips from me, of course. I will give them my knowledge and experiences as I say it to them.
Alright, so Rowie, ano bang field ang iyong pag-uusapan or ating pag-uusapan? Ano bang
Sa
tips?
akin, digital art. Pero nagfo-focus ako sa vector portrait. Ano, my
Mm.
Ayan, vector
princess?
board.
Hi!
Alright, so nakita ko yung mga work ni Rowie at talagang magaling siya dyan. Nakita ko yung kanyang
Yeah.
Instagram posts niya and hello, napakagaling talaga niya. Nakita mo ba mga works niya, Lay?
Yes, nakita ko. And actually, merong mga ibang works si Rowie na ipopost natin sa ating page. So, please check guys sa page namin. Design
Alright,
Summit.
alright. Okay,
Okay,
so
well, thank you so much,
thank you,
Rowie.
Rowie. Mm-mm.
Thank you. And let's call our next speaker, Miss Shilo. Hi, Shilo.
Hi, Lay. Hi, Kirby. Hi, everyone.
So, ano ang i-represent mo for today?
For today, Lay, I'm going to discuss something a little specific. I'll talk about 3 things new designers, even experienced designers, should pay attention to when working for a content creating business or client kasi in demand yun right now.
Yes, you're right.
Mm-mm. Alright, so napaka-interesting naman yung topic niya. So, hopefully makakatulong yun sa ating mga manonood, sa ating audience regarding sa business. Baka gusto naman nilang they want to go that journey naman, no? Oo, regarding sa pag-online business.
Thank you so much, Shilo. Excited na kami marinig yan later. And sino ang next speaker natin? Our third speaker, Kirby?
Yes, Lay, ang susunod nating speaker ay si Jude. Hello, Jude. Kamusta?
Hi, Jared.
Hello, Kirby, and hello, Lee, and hello, guys. So I'm here to talk to you about logo making, from the pros and cons of making a logo to being a logo maker. And hopefully, after this, you will learn a lot of new knowledge, especially in the industry of logo making. So that's it.
Great.
Great.
Kasi
Yan, maganda
yung
yan.
logo,
Mm-mm.
ang dami talaga nagpapagawa ng logo ngayon, most especially ngayong pandemic, na ang daming gumagawa ng business, and a logo is a very important when they're going to present their business. So, well, excited na kami, Jude, na bigyan kami ng mga tips about logo designing.
Alright, so thanks, Jude. And for our next presenter naman, ito naman si Amabel. Hello, Amabel.
Hi,
Hi
Amabel.
Rose, hi Kirby, and hi sa mga nanonood ngayon. Good day to all. So yung i-share ko ngayon is yung one of the experience to I will just limit it to five tips and tricks to digital arts, whether you are a professional or just a beginner. This would truly help a lot of people to make their arts more beautiful and more gorgeous.
Ayan, maganda yan kasi ngayon online na tayo, marami nang gustong sumabak sa, online stuff. Then, of course, as a beginner, hindi mo alam kung saan magsisimula at magaling at maganda tong panimula na matutunan nila ito, yung mga tips na para sa mga beginners, maging naman sa mga intermediate, para alam nila kung saan sila lulugar, mga ganung mga bagay, alam nila kung saan sila magsisimula, paano sila magsisimula. And maganda to dahil kung wala naman silang mga kaibigang mga artist or yung mga ganung mga klaseng tao, dito malalaman nila kung ano dapat ang kanilang dapat gawin. So, Amabel, in advance, thank you dahil alam ko makikinabang din ako dito, Lay, kasi gusto ko ring sumabak sa ganyan, no?
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Amabel. And tawagin natin ang isa pa sa mga speaker natin for today, Jonah.
So hello guys, hello Lay, and hello Kirby. Magandang araw sa inyong lahat.
Yes, hi Jonah. So,
Hi, Jonah.
ano ba yung i-impart mong knowledge, in what field naman ang iyong ituturo?
So today, I would like to share my experiences, my personal experience, in order to help those who are beginning in their art course. Well, first, I would like to share tips on how to illustrate your 2D characters better.
Wow.
Wow. So, halos same, ganun din kay Amabel, mga tips, pero sa kanya, medyo sa ibang field naman yung 2D illustration, character illustration.
Yeah. Specifically characters.
Character illustration. So, okay. Maganda yan, no, Lay? So, ikaw ba, Lay, meron ka bang mga nagawa ng mga character illustration before?
Yes, actually. Pero more on 3D kasi ako. So, nakagawa
Ay.
ko ng 3D character.
Iba naman ito sila, no? 3D.
Yeah.
Alright, so moving on sa ating next presenter, si Mr. John Claire Ibanez. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello
Claire.
guys. Hello Curbs.
Kier,
Hello
sorry.
Ray. Hello everyone.
Oo, so Claire, ano naman yung ituturo natin sa ating mga manonood ngayon?
Okay, I'm excited to share my experience about the topic. Like from Miss Amabel and Mr. Jonah, I'm gonna give some tips and tricks too. Uh, pero it's about setting up good composition in your digital artworks. You know?
Wow, maganda yan. Composition is very important when creating art, right? Yun talaga yung pinakauna na i-consider natin, 'di ba? Yung right composition, kung saan ba siya dapat ilalagay na mas makikita ng tao, mas maintindihan ng tao, right?
Yes, tama yan. And Lay, mukhang hindi lang sila ang magsasalita ngayon, tayo rin.
Oh, yes.
Meron din tayong parte dito. So ako naman, magtuturo ako ng mga, yung para sa mga beginners sa photography. Yung
Mm.
mga beginner stuff lang naman, yung mga terms na dapat matutunan para makakuha tayo ng mga magandang photos kasi yung pag-handle ng camera ay hindi lang basta-basta. So as beginners, meron dapat tayong mga dapat i-consider, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Ikaw naman, Lay, what are you going to discuss?
Oh, okay. So, ang i-discuss ko today is about 3D lang, like introduction sa 3D. Then, i-represent ko din yung works ko because much easier for me to share my experience, no? Pag work ko yung ipapakita ko kasi I know saan ako naghirap. And yeah, aside from that, aside from my works, I will present a very short 3D animation. So, hintayin nyo guys and please watch till the
Sana
end.
all, may pa 3D animation pa. Prepared si Madam Lay. So that's all of our speakers for this event. So later, guys, you'll be hearing more from them. Tuturo na nila yung mga kanilang mga sinabi kanina, yung mga kanilang mga tips and tricks, yung kanilang mga ipapresent na kanilang mga works for later, and more learnings to come, di ba, Lay?
Yes, that's right. So, hindi natin patagalin to. Let's start with Mr. Roy. Ready na ba ang iyong presentation?
Of course, I am ready.
Okay.
Right, so let's start.
Okay, hello everyone. So, welcome to our webinar for today. So, keeping up with multimedia artists, and our topic for today is all about vector and vexel art. So, we have a guest for today, and that is me, Rajan Arsate, and I am here to give you some tips and show you and tell you all about my experiences as a digital artist. So, this is two of my outputs. Yes, that is my latest ones. And yeah, this girl is my friend. This one is a celebrity. Is a celebrity, and that is me. I made for myself, of course. And yeah, so let's start with the history. I began creating my I began basta nagsugod ko 2017 muni akong dili ni akong pinakauna, pero muna akong second siguro gihimoan ako akong classmate, and yes, that is made by me. And also this, look at that color and look at that color. As you can see, ugly, but beginner. I'm a beginner, so forgive me, okay, forgive me, okay. So this is also one of my artworks that I've made since the beginning. Artworks that I've made in the beginning. This is Nicki Minaj, but right here she looks like Cardi B. Mura jud si Cardi B. Ang bot nga, no. Of course, kay siguro sa details. And yes, the next one is Steve Rogers and Black Widow. So I made this during Avengers Infinity War ata in the time. I don't know. Basta na silang duha and Steve, yeah, and
mali din ako anong puti siya. Anong puti yung buhok dire. Wala siya nalola. And yeah, so this is my latest artworks now. This is from before and this is my artworks now. This is one of the 3 vector arts that I created for Watch Dogs, and this is one of the 3 vectors that I created for the Charmed Ones, and this is one of the vectors that I created for the Altered Carbon TV series because I love watching these shows and this I love playing this game. So yeah, software. So what software do I use to create vector arts or vexel? So for raster I use Photoshop, and for vector I use Adobe Illustrator. So before I used to create raster, but now I finally found my heart in creating digital art. I switched from raster to vector because in raster, I started to understand the difference between raster and vector, because in vector your art can be like resizable while keeping the details, but in raster if you resize it from if you're from in raster if you resize it, it will lose some of its details or all of its details. So yeah, I transferred from Photoshop to AI. I used to love Photoshop creating vector arts because it is creating raster arts because it is easy, but there are advantages and disadvantages, and also in AI there are also advantages and disadvantages, but I'm used to this now, and I don't do raster type of vexel art vector vexel anymore. And let me tell you about the difference between vector and vexel. So in vector, of course, you use vector you use Adobe Illustrator, and for vexel you use Photoshop because you want your because raster is pixel based, meaning it is pixel by pixel, but in Adobe Illustrator, but in vector it is they are using math sequences or something, mathematical operations, if you may. So next, so this is my past. I think yeah, this is my last raster artwork that I made, and I love and this is one of my favorite arts that I made. This is Yitide Badaki Bill Chris from American Gods TV series. Yeah, if you watch that, then you should. If you haven't watched that, then you should. And this is the latest vector that I made last month, because my abuela died, my grandma died, so God bless to her. So yeah, big difference. So you can see this is my old logo, this is my latest logo now, and as you can see the detail of my logo, I made this logo from Photoshop. So if you resize it, it will lose the detail, some of its details. So in this one, she's just like that. She is cute. So ask me if how to do it. So how to do it? So you need to understand, learn, and apply things you understand and you learn. So I began create I made it from watching YouTube videos, looking at other artists' arts and art styles, learning the basics of the surfing, uh, basics of the software, learning art theory, and yes, watching YouTube videos. So I started watching YouTube videos when I started making katong nag katong nagtuon ko. Katong gusto na ko mohimo. So nagtuon jud ko Photoshop. Wa ko'y choice. Then lingaw siya at first kay murag proud ka beginner. Pero mariay mo pangit siya kadugayan kay daghan pa kag wala na apply. So yes. So looking at other artists, as you can see, lahi sila art style, diri wala kayo'y wala kay mga tawag na lines press ani, diri na siya lines pero murag lahi details, pero diri murag daghan sila daghag nahitabo diri. Kani siya murag gamit ato ni siya IBIS paint which is yeah, pwede ka makahimog raster base gamit ang phone nimo kung gusto ka. Kani Photoshop ni siya, kani I don't know Illustrator ata na. But yeah, as you can see, lahi slag art style o o gusto niyo, kung gusto niyo improve imong art, tanawa ang art sa laing tao kay importante jud na siya. I-judge nimo or tanawon nimo na ay dira di na ni gibuta ang shadow, ay o tama kay na mo pud guni na buhok diri, or ay ang light magud na apod diri, so meaning pagsagpa sa light na diri ang shadow, ana din na so, kung diri ay ang lighting nas ang suga na sa likod, so na jud siya mga lights this diri, so yan na ma-learn na ninyo siya kung i-apply ninyo ang art theory char ang art theory, or kung ma-understand na nimo ang art, so how to do it jud from lighting to shadows to color and everything. So this one how kay siya di na ko ni ma-achieve, kailan ako kay unsar ako reference lang jud ko kanang tawag ana gina-trace lang nako og walay mali sa trace, moingon ko daan dili magbuot kung di ka kabalo, kung moingon kung na may sinya ay trace man na, at least kabalo ug buot man mo, ikaw kabalo ka mo trace dili. Yeah, kung gusto niyo mag-learn matunan po nimo nang matrace from watching YouTube videos, ilan ang itudlo. So, unsa ang paggamit sa software pod, maapil lang po nimo na siya tuon. And also this also from other artists, as you can see kani ma-distinguish nimo ang ilang differences, kani buga kay line art, kani kay simple teenage girl, very light from the color itself na lang pod. I mean, may pwede makamaglahi-lahi, pero art style la siya, ang siguro lahi lang team diri, lahi ang team diri, lang team, pero lahi is like art style, yes, bet na ko niya. Yes, kani ganan po ko, kani common na kani ngani, which is di ko gusto mabuhat, pero okay, good nindot siya, pero bet lang na ako, mabut man mo. So learn the basics of the software, of course, dili na nimo siya mahimo kung di ka balo mo gamit og Photoshop or Illustrator or IBIS Paint, kung any art software will do as long as mahimo ang output. Bahalag lahi ang imuhang software na gigamit, nagamit ba ka GIMP, Krita, at bisag unsa, basta ma-achieve nimo ang imong gusto na output, why not? Of course, matunanan nimo siya by learning the tools that you need to create vector arts. And also from watching YouTube videos, matunanan po na nimo siya apil kay murag imanong-manong mapuna nila doon sa tudlo mo na kani gamit kag pento. Oh, okay girl, good. So for learning art theory, of course, dili lang ka wala lang ka naga-trace, wala lang limo gina-trace ang shadow, naga-learn pug ka kung unsaon paggamit sa color, unsaon paghimog shadow, unsaon pimog highlight, matun-an nimo siya sa art theory. Sa art theory na nadira ang fundamentals, ang color theory, saturation, pantone, color palette, unsa kanang daghan pa na siya sa color wheel, kabres ani o color wheel na siya ng types of unsa triang tawag kaniya. Basta analogous ning paana kanang sunod-sunod na paggamit sa color, or ang iyang kaatbang, iyang ka-triangle, or kayang basta Illuminati. Muna na siya. Basta daghan mo i-learn unsa na pagbuhat ganong dira gibutang ang shadow asa ang light. Magets day na nimo siya. Pag unsa pag kabalo na ka mo drawing, mas makatun-an dyan nimo siya kay kabalo na ka asang shadow, asa ang lighting, unsa ang color na dapat gamiton, dili ba kayo murag baga na isog kabres atong mga first art nako na murag isog kay color na murag nag-contrast ang color sa each other, murag sakit kay sa mata ang tan-aw ng art. Dapat imong art kamukha or mukha jud or duol ang imong gi-art sa original na subject. Para of course po, duol, meaning you made it, kung kamukha na jud, grabe na jud ang detail, well, you made it. Dapat dili pud awkward tan-awon ang imong mga lines, objects, tanan, shapes. po nato siya kalimtan. Natunan na po na ninyo siya from looking at it. Away ang shapes dili mura siya glibog tan-aon pero original na siya. Murag unsa na siya. Murag usahay style na lang pod siya pero dili siya sakit tan-awon. Mura siya artsy kaayo, artsy. Oh. Dari kani mas kani kay ganan ko ani artsy kani limpyo lang po kayo ni siya. Okay lang mga differences. You know, wala may mali kung limpyo hugaw. Asa na variety or saan ni po do. Duha-duha. So, okay, frequently asked question, is it okay to use palette? Yes, kung naamoy, for example, tulo ka buok kata. For example, na ay kanang gipahimo na tulo ka buok, dapat same og kanagong dapat cohesive sila, dapat tanan, okay lang mo gamit og palette. Kung sa skin color, kay di pa mo kabalo, pwede mo gamit og palette na makita nyo sa Google, pero I hope na every art ninyo naga-improve po mo, like every art kay nagatuon po maghimong inyong color palette, kamoy naga-eksperimento gamit ang color picker sa Photoshop or sa Illustrator. Okay lang, pero ay kung naga-portrait ka, sunod ka nagong kaning si girl number 1, girl number 2, lahi na sila, pero consistent lang imong paggamit sa color palette, murag pangit na siya, lain na siya, murag siguro kay himo po kag imuhang palette. Or okay lang po mga yung palette sa laing artist, why not? O unsa, pero mas okay dyan ang ikaw dyan naghimo sa palette kay mas maka-proud ka, lain mo po ng sige na pagpangupya permente, why not do it yourself? Is it okay to use the posterized method? Of course, it is okay to use the posterized method. This is the posterized saan mo paglito? Posterized method. So, ang posterized method kay murag ang poster mo gina-help na ka kung asa dapit nimo ibutang imong shadow. Kapres diri on muni ang highlight, muni ang yang normal skin, muni yang shadow. So basically yeah, murag ginatabangan na ka sa posterized method, pero lain okay na siya kung gusto nimo i-learn unsaon paggamit sa unsaon nimo unsa determine kung asa siya. Okay na siya kung i-learn nimo through nga, pero kung magamit kag posterized permente murag ikaw jud nagahimo ana or ang posterized method. So yes, okay siya kung beginner ka o gusto niyo ma-learn kung asa lang dapat ang shadow, pero kung nagagamit kag posterized method permente murag wala kay na learn, no, I'm not recommending it, pero okay lang siya sa mga beginner, pero medyo kung hawd na ka posterized sige pa mong gamit, that's a no sis. Okay, frequently asked question number 3. How long does it take to finish a single work? For me, madugayan ko sa kanong first pa na ako, maabot ko 1 week para lang sa isa ka art. Sunod, hantod na mo siya 3 days, hantod na mo siya 2 days. Wala pa na ako na-achieve ng 1 day na art, kay murag daghan pa kay ebas. Daghan pa kay, ako kay usay maglibog pa man ko or sahay, while naghimo po, nagkatanaw po TV series, so madugay jud ko mo, abot after og 3 days, pero makaya man siya 1 day kung diretso nimo, pero murag ma-stress manggugos, so nag-stop sa ako for a day, so niugma na lang nako. So muna akong ginabuhat, so murag 1 to 3 days muna ang or 2 to 3 days na man ako ang isa ka single na artwork, usa ka single. Okay, so frequently asked question number 4 na atani. How to create your own color palette for your artwork? So ginabuhat na nimo siya ay ako kay for example original panit sa original ko panit sa unsa, for example nawong sa unsa sa imong subject, imong i-color picker yang noun ikaw na mohimo sa shadow, sa highlights, ikaw na bahala ingana para na depth ang imong unsa na shadows. Yes, ana na siya. So Bogart paghilom. So ingana na siya, ingana ako naghimo sa akong palette, so muo lang. Thank you very much and God bless. Pasensya sa akong iruog sa akong igsuon. That's it.
So hello everyone, this is Shilo Magabulo and you're now tuning in to this multimedia webinar specifically about working as a graphic designer for content creators. So let's start. So we'll be tackling 3 tips, or I would say 3 things new graphic designers should know when starting their graphic design journey, specifically in cases of working for content creators. So before anything else, what are content creators? So content creators are people who create inspirational or promotional content that will ultimately attract potential customers into their brand. So most of these people will then offer services or products to their audience. So this is basically going to be a quick webinar on your responsibilities and some of the possible tasks you'll be assigned to do when working for a typical content creating business. And these are all based from my experience as one. So let's jump right in. Okay, so you get hired as a virtual assistant for a content creator. You're in charge of the graphic design. What are you expected to do? Here's tip number 1. Tip number 1, branding. Know your client's identity. So this is the part where you learn your client's branding. When we say branding, this is the look, the appeal, the kind of services or products they offer. So it's basically the company's identity. This could be defined with their style, their colors, or their tone. For example, whether they're going for a fun theme or a serious vibe. So, companies should have a branding board so that their theme will be consistent. Here's an example of a branding board I made for a client. As you can see, there are pastel tones, more on pinks and feminine colors. There's a cheerful vibe going on. And these are some examples of graphic design that I made that were derived from that branding board. So as you can see, the colors are present, the vibe connects with the company's branding. Once you get to know the client's branding or identity, your designs should reflect and always represent the brand. So that's tip number 1. Let's go on to tip number 2, which is scope. So scope, know and familiarize your work scope. So what are you generally expected to do? In this webinar, we're specifically talking about a case of being a graphic designer for a blogger or a YouTuber. Of course, task scope differs depending on what kind of company you're working for. In this case, let's check out the typical task scope of a graphic designer working for a content creating client. So first, there would be a YouTube channel, a blog, or a website. That's generally what there is. So for these, you'd be expected to create thumbnails for YouTube and blog posts, maybe a channel banner, cover photos for Facebook, and other blog or website graphics. Second is social media. So social media is big right now, so it's important to also equip yourself with social media knowledge. Social media is important in a content creating business because it's where they spread word about their company, their costs, or the products and services they offer. So this is where they can reach majority of their target audiences. So here are examples of graphics for social media in their appropriate sizes. So this one is for Pinterest, as you can see. Those are the size for Pinterest. So those are called pins. And these are for Instagram. So thumbnails, social media graphics are what your client would generally have you do, but depending on your specific client, these tasks could expand into other graphic works. For example, ebook covers or promotional posters. And there are a lot of other stuff your clients would want you to do depending on what they need. So let's go to tip number 3 and the last one for this webinar. And tip number 3 is skills. Equip yourself with proficient knowledge and skills. Are you confident about your skills in graphic design? It's okay to not know everything or not be excellent in everything, but versatility and adaptability is key to being effective in your new role. If you're faced with something you haven't done before, you should take time to learn it. And after you've learned it, always find ways to improve. And always remember, explore, learn, and grow. So before this webinar ends, let me give you other quick little tips that will help you on your journey. So first is find inspiration in other designers. So other than finding visual inspirations, ask yourself questions like, what habits do successful designers have? And then from there, you keep learning. Next is listen to your client's needs and understand their vision. So put yourself in your client's shoes. Stay organized. Sort your files according to their categories so that they'll be easy to find when you need them, and that will save you time. So those are the 3 quick tips when starting your career as a graphic designer for content creating companies. So number 1, we got branding, know your client's identity. Number 2, scope, know your work scope. 3, skills, equip yourself. So I hope you learned something and be able to apply what you learned when you need to. And if you got questions, you can reach me through jlo17@gmail.com. That's my email. And this is where the webinar ends. So thank you for attending this webinar. Till next time.
Good day, folks. Welcome to my webinar. Today, we're going to talk about effective logo making to help develop and improve the skills of any young designers out there, or even help business owners who are planning to hire business designers, for their business. So let's get right into it. First step for an effective logo making is for the logo designer is to do an extensive researching. Researching for the business or the industry that it's very important to do an extensive research for the business or the industry that you're making a logo for. Knowing what they do, what are they doing, even their mission and their vision of the company. It's also important to study the competition in that industry. What are they doing and why? And even in areas they are not doing so well, to see if there's an opportunity for you in there to stand above the competition. See if maybe you're using the same typography or the same color scheme, and that way you can decide whether to go for something different or not. And if you're going for that route, make sure that the color and the typography are suitable. Spending a lot of time for your research gives you a better understanding where you need to be placed in that specific industry. Without doing enough research, you'll just end up creating a logo that matches with everyone, or else, or worse, it really doesn't suit that industry at all, and therefore the logo becomes completely ineffective. Second, is colors and typography. It is not necessary to have a set symbol for every logo. A logo can still stand out by just using a color and a typography. There are many businesses out there that don't use a symbol as part of their logo. There's no kind of law in the designing world that says na kailangan mo ng symbol para sa logo mo. You can have a simple word mark as well. There's no doubt that a symbol can help with memorability, but you can also do the same with great color choice and great typography. The key here though is to really understand kung ano yung meaning ng mga kulay and to understand kung kailan mas magandang gamitin ang isang typeface or ang isang font. For examples, colors can have negative and positive aspects to them. Take yellow for example. In Japan, ang yellow, it represents bravery, wealth, and refinement. Pero pag nasa France ka, it can represent weakness. And in China, it represents pornography. So you see, not only colors have different meaning in different culture, but you have to make sure that you chose the right color for the right culture and also for the right industry. And also in typography, that can it can also have specific moods and feeling. Unlike colors, it has less of having some culture shock. For example, your client is a lawyer. It's best to avoid a quirky kind of typeface since it would never fit and it would give completely the wrong impression of the business. So always take time in learning and researching about color and typography because they can really help you when it comes to your logo design. Third, is take time in sketching. Instead of doing it right away in your computer or design software, it's best to spend a good amount of time exploring your concepts. You can either sketch on a paper or on your tablet, whichever suits you best. Just let your mind quickly explore ideas and iterations of your design. Sketchings allow freedom of expression, let your imagination runs free, and allows you to explore every possible avenue you can base on in the industry you're designing for. Fourth, avoid design trends. Try to avoid the design trends. I know it's very easy to get tempted by just following the design. What are the trending design nowadays? Because there are big designers that are using it anyway. Because design trends has a tendency to come and go very quickly. It has a very short lifespan. Madali lang siyang malaos kasi nga madaming gumagamit nito at it rarely stands out in most cases. The main goal dapat ng logo mo is that it should last a lifetime. Rather than riding the train wave, it's best that you should come up with something that can become iconic for the brand. I say become because hindi naman talaga lahat ng mga logo ay nagiging iconic the day they were born. It takes times, like years, to imbue that logo with meaning, story, and emotion. And in order to do that, you need to create a logo that is simple, memorable, and versatile. Think of some of the major brands in the world. When they created their logo at first, it didn't mean anything to anyone. For example, the Nike swoosh. When Carol Davidson presented the swoosh logo to kay Phil Knight, it was nothing but a simple swoosh or a check. Phil even mentioned during the selection of the logos created by Caroline that he doesn't love the swoosh logo, but he thinks it will grow on him. But today, when you look at it, you see it as a symbol that represents athleticism, sportsmanship, high quality. But it's just a check, after all. Another example is the Apple logo. When you look at it, you see craftsmanship and cutting-edge technology. But it's just a simple apple. It took years for this brand to become iconic. Years of storytelling, living their vision, and delivering their brand promises. To imbue those two simple shapes with all those meanings. And even if you strip away the meaning, you're still left with a versatile, simple, and memorable logo design. A simple way para matest mo if memorable ba yung logo mo is you can ask someone to draw your logo from their memory. It's easy to do complicated logo, but it's very hard to do a simple one that is memorable and versatile at the same time. Fifth, take the lead and trust the designer. If you're the designer, it is your task to control of the project. The client has hired you because you are a professional and therefore, ikaw dapat yung magli-lead. Don't let them push you down avenues and routes that really aren't right for the brand. In many instances, the client will try to make you a design that they personally like. Madalas sila yung parang kung ano yung gusto nila, sila yung nasusunod. Pero hindi yan yung focus ng project. The focus of the project is to create a logo design that works for the brand. Hindi para sa client, kundi para sa kanyang brand. If the client questions your motives and route for the logo, dito papasok yung unang tips natin, which is researching. You should be able to back this up by showing them all the research na ginawa mo sa simula pa lang and to show them that this is the route, the right route, the correct route that should be taken for the brand to succeed. Now, kung ikaw naman yung client, it is important to that bago ka mag-hire ng professional designer na to create a great logo for you, you need to let go of all the reins somewhat and let the designer get on with their job. Pero paano mo nga ba malalaman if tama yung designer na kinuha mo? Well, before you hire someone, always check their portfolio. Ask them about their kung ano yung proseso nila sa paggawa ng logo. What are the stages that they go through? How long do they spend on researching? Look at the testimonial ng mga previous client nila. Even ask their previous client and speak to them one-on-one. Find out kung ano ang mga experience nila sa pakikipagtrabaho dun sa logo designer. If you're going to invest money into creating a logo design which is to last your business for years, you want to make sure that you're working with a designer that is going to produce the best possible result for you. Kailangan mong i-separate yung mga gusto mo at yung mga ayaw mo. Pwedeng ayaw mo ng orange or ayaw mo ng pink, pero but if the research are showing that your target audience are attracted sa mga ganung klaseng kulay or elements, which means they will be attracted to your brand. And if they're attracted to your brand, it will turn them into our customers. Then that means you need to let go of some of the things that you hold dear in order to allow your brand to be successful. It can be tough to set aside your likes and dislikes, but you have to trust in the design process. The last and not the least na may papaya ko is that when it comes to graphic design, it's best na you should know other designing process. Hindi lang sa logo making, kundi dapat marunong ka din gumawa ng mga layout, posters, graphic, illustrated designs. Because the world of logo making is very tough one. There are so many competitors out there na pwedeng makipag-agawan sa'yo sa client. And it's not easy to become a logo maker. But if you're a versatile graphic artist or an artist, and your chances of succeeding in the world of being an artist is malaki. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Everyone, welcome to this webinar. Good day to all of you, and I'm so happy and I am so glad that you're here right now listening to this webinar. And also I'm happy to impart my experiences, my own personal experiences and learnings about this digital arts and illustration, because there are really many things, especially tips and also motivations to help you um, discover more about digital arts and illustration and to pursue your own passion. So, first of all, we have to, before we start or before I start discussing what is digital arts and illustration and stuff, I would like to explain to you what is digital arts and illustration to make a common reference about what it is. So digital art, it's a very broad word. It actually covers a lot of branches. So it anything, any art basically that uses technology, any kind and type of technology as a part of creative or presentation process or as a tool to create a specific art. So that includes like uh, digital portrait, um, whatsoever. No, layout design, logo, everything. So that was under this. Those were some of the examples that is under digital arts. So illustration, in the other hand, is a decoration, interpretation, visual. So illustration is basically visualizing any type of idea. So this doesn't matter of what kind of medium or tool you are using, as long as you are interpreting an idea, may it be in a form of posters, flyers, magazines, books, teaching materials, animations, whatsoever, as long as you are interpreting or creating a visual representation or a piece of art uh, from an idea. So when you piece those two together, it means making arts, um, producing art out from an idea in a digital way. So to give you some samples, these are the samples that I can show to you, which came from Pinterest. Credits to the Pinterest. So as you can see, there are a lot of art styles that you can see. That is because many people are very creative. They can do a same thing like portrait of uh, this is mostly common when a person or a creative person idolizes what a person an artist or like an actress, and then they paint them in a digital way. And then when many creative artists does that, they end up having different styles. It's because people has different tastes of art. So this is so since maraming digital and illustration arts covers a lot and a lot of ways or a lot of like arts output. But to this webinar, I will just specify it with illustrations like this, like humans. But it could also involve in backgrounds, but we'll discuss it later for you to know how about. So how to make such beautiful arts like this. So in order to make beautiful arts like this, you need tools. So, as we have discussed, as we have defined what digital art is, it uses technology. It uses technology to create an art. So there are applications online that you can just easily download, and you can use to make beautiful arts like this. So one example, no, one sample. Am I right? One application that is for free and that you can download on Google is Krita. So this one, I'm gonna point my cursor right now. So this logo here, this is a free application. This is named Krita. So another one is, this is a very common application, Photoshop. This is IB's Paint X, and this is Clip Studio Paint. This is Procreate, Paint Toolsai, Medibang Paint, and Adobe Illustrator, and a lot more. So there may be applications that you know that I don't know or that I haven't mentioned here, but you can use them as well when creating an art, or digital art. So what I mostly use applications here is the Krita and Photoshop and the Ibis Paint. So they've been telling me, a lot of people, creative people, artists, have been telling me that this one, Flip Studio Paint, has very nice tools. It has very unique brushes and beautiful brushes that you can use, especially when you want to create your own background, your own character with its own background, because some people just, you know, draw the character and just take the background. So um, these applications, of course, does sometimes require uh, tools, like for example, this Procreate is only available on iOS. um, ibis paint and oh sorry ibis paint and ibis paint and Medibang ibis paint X and Medibang paint is available on phone, so you can use them on phone. Unfortunately, Paint Tool site and Photoshop and Krita and Clip Studio Paint, although they were telling me that there are mobile version of this Clip Studio Paint, but I don't know. Please comment down or raise your hand. Tell me if there are, so that we can share it together. We can uh, share the information that Clip Studio Paint is actually available on the mobile phone, so everyone could use it for their own good, because not everyone has a tablet or a computer set that, you know, Photoshop and Krita and other applications require. So if you're like in low cost budget of creating arts, you can use Medibang Paint and Ibis Paint X. Rest assured, they had also beautiful and creative brushes, so you can use them. So yeah, these are just, you can actually search for like top 10 applications, best applications for digital arts, and then you can see there um, a lot of options you can choose from to start and create your own art. So we had next we had the applications, and now, just as I've told you, some of the applications here, or a lot more, require also specific tools, like for example this Wacom Intuos. This only works on with PC, or and oh yeah, they just only work on PC. So I also have one Wacom. That's what I've been using. And so this one is a tablet. So um IB's Paint X and Medibang Paint, which I told you that are available for phone that has mobile versions. They also have like tablet versions, but I don't know if they have, or they are downloadable for personal computers. I don't know, but maybe yes. I just haven't experienced it yet. Let me know if there are. And yeah, so actually tablet is quite advantage. This kind of tablet, the touchscreen one, is quite advantageous compared to this one, because this one you can see every details, you can control the lines. Meanwhile this, you would have to memorize the whole space, so that your fingers would automatically know where to start a line, where to draw, where certain points, you should put your, you know, your pen, so that you can draw well. So I haven't introduced these tools yet. So this is a tablet, it's just any ordinary tablet. This is a non-touchscreen touchscreen. Sorry for my accent. This is a Wacom non-touchscreen um, tablet, and this one here is a stylus pen, so it can be used. So, wala naman di ko record. Anyway, so this can be used in phone or in tablet too, both, because this will help you have a complete control, or it's just like drawing in traditional, but you are actually drawing in digital. You can undo it, so this makes your life more easier. So this is an ordinary phone. Any phone, oh no, not every phone, because just not the keypad ones, because they don't work. Applications that I've mentioned here that are available on mobile phones doesn't work on like keypad phones. So it has to be the touchscreen ones. So yeah, and of course the very common one to use, the very common tool or the very common equipment to make digital arts with is a computer PC, personal computer. Yeah, so all of this, I suggest that if you are just beginning to wanting to do a digital art and illustration, I swear that you don't have to buy expensive ones right away. So you would have to, I would suggest that you have to learn the basics of whichever you want to start drawing first, maybe the character, the background. But before you buy a lot of these expensive tools, I would really strongly suggest that you do study first. Of course, study anatomy and study color theory, study the lighting and stuff, which I will discuss too here, so that you would avoid, like, wasting your time or wasting your money, because I can say that not everyone is capable of buying all of these. But if you are, okay, fine, I'm not gonna touch you. But if you're just starting to make your own digital arts and illustration, don't buy expensive things like this first or right away. Just learn to study, practice in traditional. If a simple pencil, Mongol pencil and scratch paper could do your study. So, well, speaking of study, how to draw. So many people, especially beginners, really lack this. I've noticed on my personal view, many artists really lack of study, because sometimes many people, or many creative people such as me, were they were just motivated by seeing like animes or like a 3D movie or stuff, and when they start to love the anime, they start to draw them. But the thing is, they don't draw, they don't they just, some people just can't copy or recreate them. So they happen to just copy everything, and they just copy and copy, and then after all of the copying that they have done, they would realize that they are not actually good at creating digital arts, because they're just copying. Although copying is not bad, I mean, how would you learn if you were just copying? So for beginners, especially for those who are just interested, starting to get interest in digital arts and illustration, I would really strongly suggest these studies that I am also aiming to do so in my, personal experience in digital arts and illustration. So the first thing is anatomy studies. So this is um quite difficult because human anatomy study, I say in anime, but you can also like study the real human anatomy, but I it just has a lot of like details in a human body in which, well, to create outputs like this, you don't actually have to learn the veins and the muscle. Maybe the muscles is necessary in the bone and bone structure, but not the whole tissue and the muscle and every stuff that you need. You just need like the basic shapes and stuff. So yeah, first things first, learn these anatomy study. So next thing that you would then learn after like mastering or getting the basics of the anatomy study, you would then proceed to color theory or color psychology. So this theory and color psychology will help you to choose palettes for the colors, for the whatever colors that you would have to put in the hair, to put on the clothes, to put on the skin, or in the nails, or in the highlights, or whatsoever, or in the lightings if you're working on the background, or you're wanting to learn in the background. So lighting and effects. So lighting and effects actually makes the art more livelier, makes them more alive. Same as this, as you can see, this light, this is the source of light, and this is the shadows. So it makes the art pop up, and as if like in 3D form, like as if you can touch them, but actually that's just an illusion, and that is what lighting and effects brings to you. So it's quite of importance if you want your art, you want your digital illustration, digital art and illustration to stand out among others. So let's start with the anatomy study. So to elaborate more about how to study in this anatomy, let's proceed to the next slide. So this is the anatomy study. As you can see, you start with the head, with the body, then the formation, then they are just similar like this, but I will discuss it more here next. So anatomy study in anime. This studies every part of the body, including their proportion. In order to easily master this, you should learn the details. So anatomy study, it's details are very important because it just makes your art beautiful. It makes them quite what you call that, complicated, complex, that nobody could just take off their eyes of it. So I've made some what do you call it, chronological chronological order. This would start from the head till the upper body, the arms, hands, thighs, and feet. But actually I just mix this arms and hands because they are connected. So I've thought they are related. They can just explained in one slide. So same as thighs and feet because they're all connected. So first in the head, anatomy study in the head. So draw every possible angle. Start with simple angles like front, back, side, and 3/4 oblique from up and below. And then when you measured it, draw head angles dynamically. So in anatomy study, personally, I really made this kind of chronological, same as what I've mentioned here, the from head to feet, because it really helps you when, like, it really helps you to create an easier um to make an easier like base or like sketch for your idea. So if you are asking, why did you just not tell us to do the whole body instead of like chopping it into sub sub subtopics like head, upper body, arms, hands, thighs, feet, when you can just actually do the whole body? Girl, guys, girls and guys, it's not easy to do the whole body, and I am chopping it into subtopics. It's because these um these parts had their own like specific details that you would need to like you would need to you know to have a knowledge with first, so that when you draw them as a whole, all that you need to do is their proportion. Because after you do the proportion, you would know every little details of every parts that needs, so that you can make everything as a whole. So what I suggest in the head is that you start with simple angles like front, back, side, and 3/4 oblique. So when you do this, you can actually create your own style of starting how. Well, if you don't really have any idea how to start to draw a head, so what I do is just copy. So as I have said, that copying is not bad, but as long as you do not copy everything every time. So for example, this picture. So I've said here that you start to draw the front, back, side, 3/4, and oblique. Oh, the up and below. I always accidentally click something. So you, as I've said, you just copy and then redo it yourself without looking to any reference. So that's how I learn like this. And then if you have already learned, then study how you can create this. So there are many tutorials on how to start it, but for my own, I start with shapes. So for example, this one, I said front. If you want to I said here like start with front, side. I've been repeating it. So as I've started the front, as I've looked into this, I looked at the reference, as because at that time I knew that I have been copying much, so I know that I had to start with my own now. So what would you see in the head? It's like right here you can see a perfect curve, right? So I've initialized that this is a form, this is a circle form, this is circle form, so I have to start with a circle form. However, the circle form doesn't provide the whole face, so this one, the V shape, I added then the V shape and then a little curve to connect to the circle, a V shape and then a little curve. And then for the neck, of course, it doesn't have to, like maybe between there and there, Then I just copy everything. So some people actually does this with um does this with different in a different way, like they draw the circle first and then they draw the rectangle, but actually you can't do the rectangle because you had to curve it on the cheek part. So it's just either way how you learn it. So just imagine it for you to easily realize it. um, Imagine fruits. So this is a watermelon. This one this one looks like watermelon, so I'm gonna draw the shape of the watermelon. And this ears, this looks like a banana, but a filled banana. So you're gonna draw or imagine a banana here. Just take their shapes. And then for the eyes look like an eyeball. Or like the eyes look like what do you call this? The eye look like a half or a semicircle. Well, actually there are a lot of eyes, so this would be also a part of your, as I've said, there are a lot of details in each parts. So by if you're just yet studying the head, you don't have to like make a dynamics on the eyes at first. You would the eyes or the other details you would, especially also the ears. There are a lot of ears, like elf ears or like wolf ears or like gore ears. So there are a lot of details that you can change about. But for now that you are starting, start to think um, um, start to think to base it on a standard human, so you don't have to really change everything else. But again, as I've said earlier, imagine all of this like a fruit. So this looked like a watermelon head, and then this is a little banana that was attached to the watermelon. This looks like a semicircle, and the eyebrows look like a bent pen. And then you just draw them, and then you would easily remember how to draw them if you have fun or like you learn them in your own ways. So let's say, for example, another example for this. So this head it doesn't look like a watermelon, but it looks like a coconut. So view from above, the human head looks like a coconut, and the ears would look like still a banana, but with, you know, cut banana, because it was like cut diagonally. So in that way, if you don't look at the reference anymore and then you just draw, you would remember the little coconut and then the banana that was cut diagonally. And then from that kind of learning, just imagine a lot more. You can associate them with objects too, or anything that you find with a similar shape. So if you are actually done with this, you can actually proceed to the upper body. But if you want to like make a dynamics, here I wrote here level 1, level 2, and level 3. So level 2, this would this would like cover a lot, like a really lot of angles. So this would make a lot of like studying, a lot of like incorporating objects and stuff. But I was if you're just, you know, this kinds of digital arts and illustration, this kind of forms and angles, it isn't actually usually used for creating that. I mean, it's not necessary. They are not necessary angles, but they are for your own benefit if you want. The thing about proceeding to level 2 and level 3, if if you are going for an animation, this would be very very helpful because goes like this. So in every frame, this one, another frame, this one, and then until the end. If you play it consequently. So if you play them consequently, it would move as if going from left to right, or like, turning the head from left to right. So if you're going for like animation, you're aiming at that point, at that far, that level, then go for the level 2 and level 3 of studying. This level 2 would just, the angles will just point at some of the directions, but this level 3 would cover the 360 rotation of the head. So if you've already learned about level 1, which is very, incorporating basic stuff, then and you're wanting for animation, you wanted to proceed to animation, then go for the level 2 and level 3. So going forward, next is the upper body. So this is important because this will be your main. This is the upper body will hold, or like this will um indicate, it's the one that would help indicate the right proportion, especially with the head, because the upper body is a lot bigger than the head. But many artists really struggle with this, and that is why you have to study anatomy, because the upper body would the size of the upper body would overcome, or like oversize the head. So the details that you would have to study in the upper body are mostly like the abs for the men. Oh, this is quite also interesting because many artists or many people are drawn to the abs and the bellies of each character. So they are quite useful to study with. But mainly for now, I would really tell that the upper body would tell the right proportion. It will help you indicate the right proportion of the rest of the parts, because this is where everything is connected. The head, the arms and the hands, the thighs and the feet, they are all connected in this upper body part. So you can search again, as I've told you, just try to copy and copy and uncopy, and then once you've had enough of copying, then you can, scratch your reference and do it your own. And then if you cannot do it like the same as the reference, try it again. Try and try. And as I've told you, have your own, as I've told you in here about the shapes, and or like incorporating, fruits and objects to everything that you would see. Then do it same here too. So I've seen, I'll just share, but I've seen a funny way to learn the abs of men is that if you would see this and this one and this like little, oblong little watermelon in the whole of it, the funny thing that he used as a basis to know the details, or to to make a guidelines for the details of the men's abs, is that this one, he made this an eye. The artist made this both an eye. This too, like, the hard part in the men, and this as its mouth. This as its mouth, and then a line here to represent as a nose. So that was funny, but it's actually one way to learn. Just learn your own ways how to learn them. So I've given you one way here, one way here, and I guess you would have your own way the next. So, though the main or like the most common thing that you can use are this like skeletons, but I haven't learned in the skeleton way. I mean, it's just hard for me. So it has we all have our own preferences, and I didn't learn on the skeleton one, the one that you just draw this, you draw this, and then you just create something from out of that, and I can't. So I didn't use that. But instead, what I used is that when I had a curve here, I would form a triangle like an underwear, girl's underwear, and then from that, from one point to another, that would be the length of the thigh. Same here in the side, that would be the length of the thigh, and then from down and down. So, um, enough of it. Next, arms and hands. So this one is quite very like complicated, especially the arms, because a lot of artists struggle with this. But the way I've learned arms, so many people just say that you use your hand as a reference, or like draw lines in your hands, in your fingers, and then picture them and make them as your reference, or like put the picture on your drawing, and you would know how to draw hands. But actually it's much more complicated with that, because there are included like the palm slides, or the palm slits, and also the thumb. So there are many ways, but one that I've learned was like this, just like this. I draw the rectangle. I really based off many parts in shape. So I draw triangle. I draw a rectangle, but and then I slice them into half, and then the other part, the outer part, I would make them triangle. I would make them triangle. It's because the fingers all aren't all the same, aren't all at the same height. So I make them a triangle, and then make the middle finger a little bit higher, and the rest. Okay, so again, start to make your own learning. So these pictures are just examples on how to draw them. Search a lot of different ways how to learn them, and then try them in your own. If you can't figure out ways to how to draw them, so search for a lot of things, a lot of like similar as this, how to draw your hands. So there are a lot. Actually, there was one that I saw that draws a skeleton like sticks. This is one stick, two stick, three stick. They all at the same point, and then one stick here, and then they can draw all of the fingers, including the thumb, from that. But I didn't learn much from that. I usually learn from this. So the next thing is the thighs and the feet. So as I've told you, this picture here that shows an example of how to like do the thigh and feet. So we're quite similar, although for me it's just a really rectangle there. Rectangle. And then from one point and another point from the rectangle, of course, the lower points, they would serve as the thickness of the thigh. So I'm just gonna draw thigh from them, and then always take note that the thigh and the feet, this is called feet, but this one, the length of this are just the same. So they must not be like this is lengthier and this is a bit short. No, they must be at the same height, so that you would see so that the proportions are nice. Although in reality it isn't that, the same. But if you want to have, if you're basing off, or like if you're basing on a standard, ways of drawing thighs, then you must follow that. And it's also, it's the most ideal length of the thigh and the feet. Well, when it comes to the feet, so I have here an example of drawing this. You start with circle and circle, oblong. So this would be the, I don't know what it's called, heels? Yeah, I think this is the heels and this is the toes. So the toes would look like little watermelon. The toes would look like a little oblong, and also this also a circle. I don't know, a golf ball. And this, well, I think this is just to form that, that kind of bone that curves out, just like this, that curves out. Yeah, like this one that curves out. Maybe that was the thing, that this is the reason why it's basis. But I didn't learn in this way. I've learned the feet the same way with the hands. I just draw a rectangle, and then but with the hands, right, with the hands, diba, I draw a rectangle and then a triangle in the outer side. But when it comes to feet, I draw a rectangle, and slice this in a bit, slice it in half, and then slice the other half diagonally, but curve it like outside, not inside, and then that would form the feet. But if you would tell me, like, what about the other angles? Well, girls and guys, I'm still like working on it. But I don't reveal feet. I don't use feet so much in my digital arts and illustrations. So, yeah. So, these are one of the helpful tips to learn fast. So, as I've told you earlier, learn from shapes, detect the shapes out of those out of those out of the whole body that you have learned. For example, circle plus triangle is face equals the face shape. So example, this is the circle, then you add a triangle below, of course. Where else would you have to add the triangle? And that would be your face shape. But that would be weird because the what do you call this, the below the mouth, the chin would look so pointy. So I don't think that was helpful for me. But so I don't use this kind of ways of sketching. I have different types. I draw the cross, circle, and then a cross, and then the V part, and then the curving, connecting the circle, the side of the circle, anywhere in the side of the circle, making a draw and curving it to the V that is below. So the V would also tell how long the face shape would be. So that's how I learned the face, which is in the head anatomy. So measurements, use your own understanding of each part's proportion to each other. So this talks about the proportion. So as I've told you, how much the thigh and the feet has to be at the same equal. So you have to have your own understanding of how human anatomy works. For that, there are a lot of like measurements in the Google or anywhere, or any search engine that you have. You can search it there, the proper. But there are actually a lot of you can see a lot of styles to measure proportions. But to tell you, I've told you how the thighs, how the thighs and the feet are related. They are the same, you know, height. The hands or the arms and the whole arms would have to like end just below the butt, just below the butt. So the hands always ends up here. But actually in your own understanding, it can also just end up like right here, middle butt. So you have to create your own measurements. Measure each sample of human anatomy. Of course, you wouldn't have to measure just one type of human anatomy that is given. You have to search for a lot because there are a lot of type of bodies, and from that you can get like a lot of proportions so that you can get accurate measurements, like especially when you compare the upper body to the head, because the head would be really a little, smaller than the upper body. So grids, of course, grids would help you be in track when you're copying a certain detail. It helps with memorizing the hands movements. Memorizing the No, I mean hand muscles. Hand muscles. So, remember when I told you that you don't have to buy expensive tools right away when you want to start digital drawing or making digital arts? Yes, of course. You don't have to buy them right away because as you know, a person with experience about this, I would really suggest you to start sketching traditionally first. So this grid grids would help you to copy um, a certain a certain a certain model, especially when you're studying anatomy. Grids will help you to locate where the proper um, proportion is, where the proper shape should be, where the proper details should be put. So it would help you. But if you would ask me if it is helpful in digital arts, yes, of course. So grid helps to in like especially in perspective, yeah, where you put the so much lines to be your guidelines when you were drawing different perspective. That one I didn't discuss it in here because I was just focusing on like character, but I was just inserting a little bit of knowledge that you can get in drawing like backgrounds. But I don't specialize in backgrounds too because I was still trying to learn backgrounds. So grids would help you to know where should the perspective be at, especially the one that were quite skewed, um perspectives that are quite skewed or like distorted. So just use these grids um for your own personal benefit. Use them if you would have to. But if you would ask me if grids are necessary for character making in digital arts, for me, no, it isn't necessary. But if you want to study anatomy first and sketch it traditionally, grids would help. And also, if in digital arts too, uh, in digital arts, grids are only helpful if you are in making like your own backgrounds and not just taking backgrounds. So avoid long time breaks. So this tip is very crucial. You may take breaks because sometimes it's really quite um s- you know uh what do you call this, draining. It's really draining just staring at your computer or staring at your cell phone or like staring at your tablet. It especially hurts the eyes. It irritates the eyes. It makes you your eye cry a lot even if you're not sad, but it it sometimes destroys your health. So you would have to get breaks. But I tell you, do not take a long time breaks, because a long time breaks would deteriorate the muscle memory. And this muscle memory is very important. It is very essential. It is very important when it comes to drawing. This is because um, there's a there is this called, muscle confidence muscle confidence, where you just draw a line confidently without ridging it, without like ruining the lines, without like unnecessarily curving it when you want just a straight line. So that is one reason why you have to avoid long time breaks, because it will erase every memory that your muscle is used to. So yeah, so take note of these tips. And yeah, so we are done with the anatomy. I've mentioned three main, like, things to study. The next would be the color theory and color psychology. So it would help you create an attractive piece of art. Also, this will also especially help your viewers or audience to understand what you want to portray in your own, art. It sets the mood. So these are the examples. Um, these are the color theory. So monochromatic, analogous, complementary, split complementary, triad, tetradic, warm and cold. Actually, I personally use some of these, like, color combinations, to use as my own palette, and I tell you that it works. I just don't have my own art right now here to show you. But this, for example, monochromatic. So say yellow. So what would I do? Yellow. I would make the yellow, the hair, the skin too. No, I'm just saying that any shades from the yellow can help you to create your own art, or to base your art from. So for example, the yellow would be the base for your hair, and then the lighter yellow would be its highlights, and then the a darker yellow would be its dark shade. And then if you want to go to the skin, you may mix yellow with another color. For example, green. You can actually use this yellow green. Oh, that would turn to analogous. But actually, monochromatic is not so much, I don't use monochromatic so much. But okay, let's just turn here. Analogous, complementary, split complementary, triad. So you can see there are arrows there that indicates the colors that are complementary. It means those are the colors that works well in the eyes. So as I've said earlier, you don't have to make the yellow, the whole yellow. Lighter yellow would be your highlights, and then the darker yellow would be your shades. And then when you want to turn the skin, you may add the yellow with orange and make it as your skin tone. And then again, make a darker color of this yellow orange, or maybe just use the orange or whatever. Just make a darker color of this color and make it the shade, and then yellow again as your highlights in the skin. So there are a lot of variations, but just stick to this three palettes here, and then just add the light and the dark. So one also that works nice, I think it's wrong. Anyway, so these kinds of colors, you can use this as a palette for your art, so that it would look nice. Same here, warm with cold. I don't think this is the boundary. I think this is the boundary. I don't know why the the reference is wrong. This picture is wrong. I've learned that from this to this is the cold, and then from this to this is the warm. So a few more tips too if you want um if you want like a trivia. This is what I've learned from my school. So the hottest color is red orange. Meanwhile, the coolest colors is the blue green. So if you want to create like such an irony, you can use those two colors, the blue green and the red orange, as you know, two complementary things, two complementary colors to be the basis to be in your palette, and then just expand it by adding like whites or by adding blacks. And then another tip too, so tones, tints, and shades. I didn't wrote it here. I should have put it there. But tones, just take note of this. Tones, shades, and tints. So they are all different. So tints is color, or color plus white. Tint tints are color plus gray, and then shades is color plus black. So if you would say that this color, so color is just the whole color, it's just the whole color. But if you add it with black, then that's um like that would be the shade. If you add this color with white, that would be the tint. But this alone is a hue, a tone. This would be the hue or the tone. So anyway, let's proceed. Again, you can use these colors. You don't have to actually stick the arrow stick here. You can actually go here, this three, to make as your own palette. So again, next is the color psychology. It brings so much about the mood, the feelings, the arrow, and that brings the art. That brings the art to life. Wait, let me check if I was still recording. Yes. So this would the understanding. Diba, I've showed you how this could be your color palette. So right now, I'm gonna show you how colors affect the viewers. Colors has its own like definitions, and you should know that when you want to portray or create a digital art and illustration, that would have to explain or express something that you want to express. For example, when you're kind of depressed, one thing that you could actually use is black. One artists could actually use black. So if you're happy, because black means mystery, dramatic here, formal, sophistication. You can find every definitions here. So if you're happy, you would usually use red or yellow or sometimes orange. And if you want to be like the art to look like powerful or like strong, you can actually use purple or like blue or like pink and whatsoever. Just whatever the expression that you want to portray to the audience or the whole world, then base the colors from here. From the color psychology, you can search any meanings, any definitions, many more definitions from the Google. And then when you find that, you can go to the color theory and choose what kind of color schemes would you choose. For example, you just want a 3-color scheme. That would be a triad. Oh no. Triad, split complementary, analogous, tetradic if you want like more than 3. So yeah. The next is the lighting and effects. So this one, this would make the art feel more alive. So aside from the color, shades, lighting and effects also affect, the mood that the audience or the viewers may feel. This would also like emphasize the contrasts between the colors, as I've told you, diba, earlier, that if you add this hue, if you add this color with light, just add this yellow with light yellow, or like add this yellow with white, it will become like a light yellow and make that your highlights. So this is the purpose of the lighting and effects, to make contrast between colors, because if you would just put every color in there, that would look so flat and not more alive. So lighting and effects for me usually works for backgrounds like this. So, yeah. So use grayscale as your palette to emphasize near and far light and shadow and depth and peaks. So just like this, you would imagine that every time you would see this, you would you would see this as very far because it's kind of blur, and then the dark shades are like fading, and then if you would see around here, you would see a strong color, dark color, so you would see that it's nearer in your view. So in this art too, you could see that there's kind of depth that it creates. The dark shades creates a depth, an illusion of depth that makes it look like there's actually a depth, or like this eye actually has like a real content or real flesh in there. So emphasize near, far, light and shadow and depth and peaks. So just as this one, same here, it's just have the lighting effects. So one important thing to remember in the lighting effects is that if you should know where the source of the light is. That is the first thing that you have to do if you want to make a grayscale. You would have to locate your own lighting. And then if you really don't know how to make a lighting, this is actually hard because this has no concrete like ways or like specific style or specific what do you call that, specific technique to use, because everything, like for example, every subject by means like subject and art would mean whatever that is drawn, whatever that it may be, the character may be, for example, in this picture the subject is the ball, so because the ball was being drawn here, it's the focus of the eyes, it's what we see. It's not the background that we see, but it's the ball that we see. So that is the subject. The ball is the subject. So every subject had different shapes, but and so every shapes could have their own depths and have their own peaks. So but this ball can be an example, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the way everything should be. It is the way how everything should be based. This should not be the whole everything that you should base your lighting and shadows, because not every subject look like a ball, but this would help you understand how lighting works. So first, if you want, first start with basic shadow and light. So the first thing, so just the light family would look like this. It is the lighter shade. It is the lighter shades. It doesn't necessarily mean like it is the. I mean, this is real complicated. Even I was having a hard time to detect like shadows and light family, and I've always, I've been sometimes getting wrong, getting the light and the shadow. But one thing to remember is that there is always a bounce light. What is a bounce light? So, bounce light is like the light in the shadow. The light in the shadow. For example, diba, as you can see, shadow here, it should be all dark because it's the shadow. Just the same here, it's all black. But why is it that in here, in this ball, why is it here that in this ball it's not all dark? It's because there was this called bounce light, where a light from the ground bounces and it creates shade, like kind of the same as here. It creates the shades that that you know like that affects or that lightens some parts of the shadow. So as you can see, it's not everything. It's not everything in the shadow family that were hit by the bounce light. So it's just right, I think, here, because the lightest source is there. So the light would bounce here to the one that you think has the peak, and then the light would then also like go to the bounce to the floor, which would actually the light that was bounced here would also bounce to the directly to the shadow, which is near, and then the shadow would have like light source or light shade underneath, even though it's supposed to be shadow. But it all depends on like how much the light is. So if you want to study more of this, you could actually just, you would, if you want to like just reach the standard study, the standard thing, all that you just need to study is the light and the shadow family and then the bounce light. But if you want to be a more complicated person, then learn all of this, study all of this: the center light, highlights, the form light, halftones, the core shadow, the reflected light, occlusion shadow, cast shadow, penumbra, and everything. So it will be quite complicated because there's just a lot to understand in lighting and effects. But so far, shadow family, light family, and the bounce light, I didn't know why it's not also stated here. But important thing is that you were here, you were listening, you hear what I say. So it's I would suggest this three first, this because this is quite the necessary thing to make your subject or to make your art had the illusion of depth, peaks, shadow, light, near and far. So next is the lighting and the effects. So currently I've been using Photoshop, and in Photoshop, I don't know about the other applications you may actually want to try to explore, but Photoshop has its own layer style. So these are just the layer style. So this would actually help to to create the shadows, to create the effects and the lighting. So for example, this drop shadow here, if you draw something in a layer, like for example a circle, and then that circle would, if you click this drop shadow, that circle would have its own shadow, and then you would just have you can just you know um you can just adjust them, just like for example here. So this is the preview. This is one thing that you would see. This is the effects of the layer. This would tell what the effects are doing to the drawn object. For example, in a layer there is a box, so there is a box. So erase that circle earlier. Let's say in a layer there was a box, and then you click this drop shadow and then adjust the distance. So the distance of course would tell the distance, but the spread would the more you increase the spread, the more it will tighten, or like it will the shadows will compress and make it like a bit solid, make the shadow a bit solid. And then the size, this would also tell how much scattered the shadow will be. So yeah, you can adjust a lot of settings here. Just try to explore everything. Even me myself haven't explored everything yet and haven't used any of the any everything of from the layer style, but I usually like to use drop shadow and inner shadow, I guess. So far that was it. I think this is common. I mean, I think this styles, this effects could also be common in another applications that you might know or you might have actually encountered. So alright, so this effects, this is a very important thing to like master, or like to know how it works. So blending mode groups, these are available on Photoshop and on Ibis Paint, but you know, with different names. Some had different names, but they had the same like function. So if you want to as I've revealed you the colors, remember the that I told you the color schemes that you can take from here. So let's turn now to this blending modes. For example, you had like three colors. Let's say for example green, blue, and red. Oh, primary colors. Let's say green, blue, and red as your palette. So if you want to do your skin in like a blue because you want a weird looking character, so if you make your excuse me, if you make the blue as your base, then in another layer you can add and clip mask or whatever. You can add a layer to that and turn the blend mode to multiply, and it will darken the blue. The blue that you apply with the same color from the palette would be a little bit darker, but it would only appear on the if it interlaps or connects to the first blue, the base blue, the first blue that you have drawn. Does it make sense? Anyway, just remember this descriptions. So these blending modes, this would usually darken. This would be the lightening. It lightens every color that you add from the on the top with this blending, with this mode. And then the contrast, actually I don't use so much here, but the overlay, but I rarely use overlay. What I usually use is this multiply, color burn, and then in the light for lighting, because I love highlights. I use so much of color dodge, linear dodge, not much of lighten and screen, but these three I use them usually for the skin. So the rest of this I have not used this, but you can also try and experiment and with different colors how they work. So if you would then find out how they would work, then it would help you to um um play much easier with your colors and palettes with different variations, since you have to stick with those palettes that you have. So um oh, of course, friendly reminders. So this these friendly reminders are my own for you to this is similar to tips, but this is mostly concerned with you as an artist, as a creative people. So first friendly reminder is break time is game time. Don't forget to rest after long hours of studying. Brain doesn't work well when it's tired. So don't push so much don't push your brain so much that it might collapse, because every brain has to rest. It doesn't every every brain has to rest, because such as how a worker has a rest day like Saturday and Sunday, that is also the same with your brain. So break time is game time. But I've told you right earlier that you should avoid like long time breaks, because it will lose your muscle memory, and it will be a disaster, because whenever you try to come back and draw, you would be confused why you can't draw the way you draw before, to avoid long time breaks. But also, never, overuse your brain, never overuse your hands, never overuse every of your self to art, because break time is game time. Another reminder is all arts are flawed. So every one of you almost really had to do a great art that will stun the whole world, but you don't have actually. You don't have to perfect a piece of art, because it will never be. But what makes you perfect is the expressions you impart to the world. So there was this quote that I found on Facebook where a person is selling art, and then he quoted, it was a man, it was an old man actually. Then he quoted that whenever anyone buys his art, um, the buyer also buys his whole heart, his whole time, his whole passion. So um, you don't have to be the most pro artist in the whole world, but the expressions or the things that you share to the world and to the viewers is what makes it perfect, because you're sharing a part of you, because you're sharing your ideas and your thoughts. Every you're sharing a piece of you. Yeah. So we all start. Next reminder is that we all start somewhere, of course. Don't be discouraged when people say you suck at making art. No one is born professional. We all start somewhere, of course. Whenever you see someone like struggling and doing things like this, you don't have to discourage them. You don't have to like make them feel that they're a loser, that they are a loser than you, because everyone really starts somewhere. You're not born a professional right away. So respect them. In fact, encourage them to do more. And if you were the one that was being discouraged because you don't have to you don't make arts, just and then just imagine every pro art starts somewhere. Imagine how much their old works would look like if they were to go back in time, go back into their old arts. Then you would just laugh because you had the same level before. But in time, you would grow. As you would grow and progress in your making of digital arts, you would then realize that we really all start somewhere. Alright, so the last one, I guess. Yes, it is the last one. Last one. Patience is virtue. Patience is one key to make everything possible. So, patience. If you can't get up If you can't, I mean, if you can't make the art the way you want to make it, then be patient. Try next time. Try again. But um, you don't have to like give up right away. Just be patient. Take a break if you need to, but never really give up into something, especially if it's your passion or you're very passionate about it. Just be patient. Patience is a virtue. Okay. So that is all, and thank you for listening. Bye.
So, hello guys, good day to all of you. My name is Jonadale Silva, and today I'll be giving you tips on how to illustrate 2D characters digitally. So, first and foremost, I would assume you guys are beginners or intermediate learners in the digital arts. Some of you may have a little background on drawing, and some of you may don't. But that's okay, I'm gonna help you guys. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. So first off, in illustrating 2D characters, you'll need a little background on drawing softwares. There's a lot of drawing softwares available out there, but I've listed down the most commonly used ones. If you're starting, you'll probably prefer a free drawing software. Krita and Ibis Paint are free, and there's a lot of tutorials online that would help on how to acquire them. Both these two digital softwares are both good because they are also available for those who are only using their mobile phones in drawing. So personally, I like using Paintool Sai in illustrating characters just because it's the software I find easier to use, and this may vary as you explore different softwares, and that's okay because we are all different. I often use Photoshop in illustrating characters because I find Photoshop more suitable to use if you are painting digitally. So guys, digital painting and digital illustration are both different things, but I'm not gonna venture onto that, so let's proceed. The other two softwares, Clip Studio and Procreate. So Clip Studio is a very handy software. I've experienced it for a 3 month trial, but unfortunately it's not free, so I haven't really explored it. So Procreate is exclusive to iOS, so if you have an iPad and that's what you use, that's probably the best one for you. So next. So in order to illustrate a character, you need to first have a sketch or a rough sketch for an instance. The rough sketch stage can be traditionally done and be exported to a digital software. If you're comfortable in drawing characters traditionally, you can draw it in paper and take a picture or scan it and upload it to a digital software. Or like me, you can draw it digitally on the software. So in this stage, guys, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Sketches only serve as a guide. You can scribble it up until you can form a character you best like. Also in this stage, don't forget to name all your layers because when all of your layers pile up because of the next steps, it would be harder to navigate later. So it's better to name all of it. Also, when you are drawing in a digital software, it would be best to flip your canvas however you like, whether it be horizontally, vertically, as long as you find it more comfortable to draw it in that angle or yeah. So the next step after the sketch would be your line art. In digital arts, you can just trace your rough sketch layer by creating a layer on top of it and lowering the rough sketch layer's opacity. So most beginners have a hard time in doing this just like when I was starting. So the question, why is it hard when it's just outlining your sketch? So in line art, there's really no right and wrong. It's just how you play your lines. Different brush types would also create different lines. So if you use a hard type brush, your brush strokes would also appear hard. Same goes if you use a smooth type of brush. That's um that's an important thing to remember. And also it would be best if you try out different brush. That's also why I like Paintosai, because they offer a different variety of brush, like this this tipped brush, smooth brush, hard brush, and very hard brush. Like there's four variations of it. And also you can download online different brush steps, and you can also tweak with its properties right here in the bottom part. That's also a good thing to remember. So also using double lines. Also in line art, it's better to use double lines. Double lines is when you use a thinner lines on top of using a thicker lines. This is my favorite style or technique. If your line work is on your character's outer body part, like curves or the sides of the head, it would be better to use lines that are thick. And for the inner parts like eyes, mouth, or the inner body parts, it would be better to use smaller lines or thinner lines. Also, when you're outlining, it would be better to imagine where the light would be for your characters, because for that parts of your character that would be hit by the light, it would be better to use a thin line there. So I'm gonna explain that bit. So just like when I said that you use a double lines, I've you can see it here that I've used thicker lines for the curves and the thinner lines for the inner parts. So that's what it means. And also when I've said that it would be better to imagine where the light would be for your character, in this line art I've decided that my light would be right here. So the light direction would probably right just like this. Like it would hit this part, this part. So I in this part I've intentionally used thinner lines in order to emphasize that that part is hit by the light. So next, flat colors. If you're having a hard time picking colors for your character, there's a lot of color palettes you can choose from. Also, you can look at the color wheel to know what the better color combination be. Maybe monochrome, complementary, or tertiary colors. There's a really lot of color variations. So in this part, you just have to pick the general colors your characters would have, like for its hair, eyes, skin, and clothes or accessories. No need to overthink it. In coloring your characters, you can create a layer under your line art and start coloring there, just like this guy. So this is my line art layer. I've created a I've created a flat color layer under it. That way, your line art would be shown under your colors. Yes, so what I like to do, and because it's very simple and efficient, is I outline the part I'd like to have that color on and fill it up with a bucket tool. So for example, in this umbrella handle, I've outlined the umbrella. You can just paint it over, but for just to show it to you, with this is the easier way. You can outline it with a gray, with a brush or pen, outline it just like this and create a rectangle. So the center would be left with white, and that part you can just fill it up with a bucket tool. The bucket tool can be found here or with the hotkey G, or yeah. So the outcome would that be with that would be like this. Yeah. This is also the technique that I use on the other parts of the parts of my character. So next, so I've mentioned before that lighting is very important. In photography, there's different techniques on how to use lights like accent lights, ambient lights, and many more. So if you don't know that, I'd suggest that you guys look it up. But as beginners, you can just use one light, like having a light in the top of on top of your character that represents the sun. This is by far the easiest and the most common light technique. Now, when choosing light, you can decide whether what color your light would be. If you're aiming for a morninglish light, you can go for whites. If you're aiming for that sunsetty lights, You can go with a soft orange or hard orange. It's up to you. So just like this, you have one light that represents the sun. So if you put it right here in the left side, it's obvious that the light would hit the left side of your character, and the bottom part of it would be shaded or dark. So, and personally, what I like to do in my illustrations, the light technique that I use is having two lights. The one on top would be the sun or the main light, and the other one would be the accent light or the ambient light. For the second light, you can decide whether what color would you use for the light depending on your chosen theme. So guys, if you have like that fantasy theme, like you choose colors that's out of a fantasy, you can use ambient lights for that. So you have a focal light here, the main light, which for example shows white lights, and here you can use number two lights or three lights depending on what you want. So you can have a green light here a blue light, depending on the theme that best suits your design or character. So next, so shades and tints. Now that you have decided where your lights would be, the shades and the tints will surely follow. Shades are the parts where the light wouldn't reach, and your tints would be the parts in your character where the light hits. Normally, there would also be tones. Now, that would be the middle area between shades and tones, but because this is a beginner's guide, you can explore that area later on. So, for shading the parts of your character that you deem to be a shaded part, you can select the hue of or color for that part and choose a more darker hue of that color to be used for the shading. So, for example, for my character's hair, the flat color is gray, so I've intentionally used a darker hue of gray, like dark gray, to represent the shaded part. And I've used a lighter shade of gray, like light gray, to represent the tones. Like what I've did here in this part, it's a lighter tone. Like it's subtle, but that's definitely there. So next. Line color. Now, this is purely optional, but I highly suggest this technique for beginners. For you to do this, you have to create a layer on top of your line art. So, line art and the line color layer. So, you have to create a layer on top of your line art and use a clipping mask. A clipping mask can be found here. So, a clipping mask would mean that only the layer under your clipping mask will be affected of the changes inside the mask. So if you make changes like color changes here, if you paint blue here or white, just like what I did here, the color would only be reflected under this layer, the line art layer. So this is the line art. So I painted white on the clipping mask, and only this part, this part is painted with white because it is from the clipping mask. So you can use this technique to emphasize the shades or tones depending on how you use it. For example, here for the umbrella, here, I used a darker hue for red to create an emphasis on the shade of the umbrella. So the line art here is colored with darker hue of red to emphasize the shade. And for the glove, just like I said before, I've used white to emphasize that that part is directly hit by the light. So next. So for backgrounds as beginners, this can be very taxing. So you can just go for the solid fill you can just go for the traditional solid fill background. You can choose a background that best suits your character. So for my character, I used a lighter shade of blue, like a cerulean blue, because personally I find that very attracting. So maybe for the background, I will talk about it in the more future. I will talk about it more in the future discussion. So that would be all, guys. I hope that you guys learned somehow. Thank you guys for listening and continue to do your best in creating your artworks. Thank you.
So what's up, guys? I am Junker Ibanez. Um, I will creating these slides or video to guide you guys on how to have a basic understanding of a good composition of an artwork based on my experience only. I'm not yet on a master class of this field, but I will do my best to guide you guys and learn from it. This is a brief guide, but a comprehensive one. So let's get started. So what is the importance of a good composition to your artworks? Well, composition in art stands for an ordering or of artistic elements in a unifying way that makes a final result effective. The term composition means putting together or the act of combining parts or elements to form a whole. It can be simply defined as the arrangement of visual elements according to the principles that were established in visual practices. Now, for me, this is the 7 basic tips and tricks of setting up good composition in your creative artwork. First is begin with your theme. Theme relates to the meaning of a painting, drawing, rather than the subject, which is specific basic. Aha. This is the first thing you'll do, I think. Uh, we create an artwork based on the ideas we get to ourselves, of course, or the inspiration of creating this and that, right? It leads you to a unique theme. Next, tip number 2, plan your final output. Planning an output can be a help as you know exactly what you're going to do, but it could also inhibit spontaneity. Letting a painting evolve as you work is a very freeing and lets you being spontaneous, but also leaves you open to the possibility that the painting won't go anywhere and you'll end up with a mess. In this stage, we calculate the placements and the gathered ideas. Our planned art, it is very useful because it is like a blueprint to the artwork we create. Like we begin sketching it and we foresee the form, the final looks of our artwork. Next. Tip number 3, perspective. In art, it is a system of representing the way that objects appears to get smaller and closer together the farther away they are from the viewer. Perspective is key to almost any drawing or sketch as well as many paintings. Capturing the better perspective, of course, of the art will impress the viewers. Everyone has a good grasp of finding the perfect action, the perspective, or the angles of the piece. Tip number 4, be clever with the color you choose. It's important in your artworks because color is a characteristic of human visual perception, but don't step out of the border of using it. This is crucial part of creating artworks. You need to pick the color that suits the theme of your artwork. It also depends on your taste of applying colors to your piece, but you need to limit the what do you call this? The color palette you've used to avoid chaos of vision to your artwork. Tip number 5, symmetry and character focus. Symmetry in your artwork is when the elements of a painting or a drawing balance each other out. This could be the characters or objects themselves, but it can also relate to colors and other compositional techniques. Applying this is where the objects of your artworks takes balance, and it is a useful method of a good composition. Example, rule of thirds and rule of odds are one of the main examples of executing the placements of the scenery and help you distribute the line of sight of the artwork to the viewers. Next. Tip number 6, shape and size, light and sound distribution. One tip that really improve and give light to your artwork is applying this method. As you can see, managing the size and shape of your artwork really helps you conduct the weight of the objects or subject. You need to familiarize also the lighting and shadow, like I said earlier. It also gives weight, volume, or life to your piece. I also struggle in this area, but I just keep learning and learning and learning and mold my own style of applying this method. Next, and the last one tip, summarize and finalize. This is where you review and finalize your artwork. Also, this is where the absolute compositioning takes place. Um, Adjusting the colors of your artwork to your comfortable zone, checking the lighting and shadowing, the glow effects also, if you use it, maneuvering the angles, shapes, forms, etc. All in all, there goes it. Summarize and finalize. So I'll give some samples of my artwork last year, but I have that I applied. I'm using the 7 tips in these artworks that I'm giving to you guys. There I applied the one of the tips of a good composition. First one is this. This is just a sketch of mine. Like I applied the planning of my output. Like for me, this is not yet a fully completed artwork. I just found a unique art style and tried to use it to perform this artwork. Another one I use is the perspective right there. Also is applying the lighting and shadows. This is just a plan of myself. So let's go to the other completed artworks. Okay, so this one is a fully completed artwork that I've done. Like first, as I am playing the game League of Legends, the champions there inspired me, and that pushes me to create an artwork and did me to do this. That applies the beginning of the theme. So tip number one, in the left side, I planned everything first. The action of the subject and where should I place the perfect perspective or angle to it. The right side is the finished product. There I planned the colors that fits to the costume of the character and takes advantage of it. I just limit the colors I applied to it, just exploring the violet, the blue, the gold and yellow colors from lighter to darker. Another tips I applied is the character focus. There, then I exaggerated the focus of the character to pinpoint her action, which is she is holding an energy orb like that. Another tip I applied this artwork is applying blur effects to the other area to guide the line of sight of the viewer. Then after it, to the next trick I used is manage the light and shadow. Yes, to give more life on it. You need to execute it properly to draw attention to the viewer again. Then there goes your last part, the review of the final parts, which is my favorite. Like majority of us artists. And check things out. Possibly you can add another effects to your artwork. In this artwork, I applied orbs everywhere, adding some glow to the other areas, shining reflection, etc. So that completes my finalization of my artwork, and that satisfied me that I used the elements of a good composition. Next sample. This one. Another example is a character again from the game League of Legends, but this time there are subjects, and this one is just an idea of mine. Like this is from the idea I thought that have a possibility to be done, like a fan art, because there's a costume or skin of the character didn't really exist in the game. Again, to the left side, I apply the first step, the theme, more on exploring the galaxy, space, like the other example artworks I explained recently. After gathering your themes, the story, or the ideas, plan your final vision first before getting to the next stage. Know the actions of the subjects, and then I applied the rule of odds on managing the placements of the subjects or objects. Now in the side, that is the finished artwork. On the next step, I applied the colors that fits the theme and to the subjects. The theme is galaxy and spaces, so I took the colors like blue for its atmospheric feels. Now to the colors I used the costume are pink and maybe red violetish color to the girl, which is a complementary color to the yellow green and yellow that I put to the giant. Next tips that is used, the symmetry balancing. Here I balance the colors and the parts of the object by a rule of thirds, and it went well. To be honest, it really depends on you if you use the rule of thirds and the other one, rule of odds. I just use it because it really guides me where should I put the subjects and objects. Now back to the review of my artwork. The emotion, of course, the emotion I put to the Titan, it's just having the gesture of winking to the girl, or no, it is just being disturbed by the brightness of the girl, which is joyful or happy maybe because she explored space with a friend. Now, now to the next trick is the lighting and shadows. One of the obvious part I do here is like balancing the colors. You need to also balance the lighting and shadow distribution. Here in my artwork, the brightness of the girl made the giant being dazzled with the brightness. Then that followed the shadows through to the opposite side, to the head. Like example, the part of the head of the giant reflected the light in his right side of his head, and obviously for the other side to be darker. Same goes to his hands and the lower torso. For the last tip and trick, finalizing and summarize. There I put the icing on the cake, the nail on the coffin, putting some pictures in the back and the stars. I also use glow and blur effects to add better composition to your art. Here's another sample. It's the same to the three artworks I reviewed so far. Applying those tips of a good composition helped me create all these stuffs. But to be honest, it really depends on your art style. Not to following any of this guide doesn't mean you're wrong and not doing the best art ideas you came up with. In art, for me, there's nothing right and nothing wrong. Just follow where the ideas of yours takes place. I am just like that early into my high school days. I just reject any tips and tricks, but I created a piece of art that satisfies me. Same right now, I am following for me. Composition in art is dynamic in every era. That is my observation. It really changes, keep on changing. It creates some unique advantage or disadvantage, depends on how you use it or not use it. This is just my advice. It is just if you really love creating more artistic piece and keep on grinding and practicing, you will reach it. Just believe in yourself. And I really hope this guide teaches you some new learnings in your lab and drafting table. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope I see all of you next time around. Peace.
Good day, everyone. I'm Kirby, and welcome to the webinar. I'll be sharing some knowledge to people out there who wants to try out photography for the first time. This is just a short, basic lesson that photographers need to learn in getting decent photos. These are things that you always have to keep in mind when using a camera. So I'll be discussing the three pillars of photography: understanding aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Being able to understand these three is very important to easily set your camera depending on your situation. If it's nighttime, a place with harsh lights, taking photos of subjects that are moving. Proper understanding of these is needed. So let us start with ISO. Without touching the shutter speed and aperture, you can actually brighten up your photo if it is somewhat dark or the venue lacks the right amount of light. It is typically measured in numbers, a lower number representing the darker image, while higher numbers mean a brighter image. However, raising your ISO comes at a cost. As the ISO rises, so does the visibility of graininess or noise in your images. I rarely use this option in brightening up the image as this really destroys the quality of the photo. It'll lose its smoothness or like sharpness, if you know what I mean. Now, as you may see on our first example, it shows that the lower the number of the ISO, it is clearer compared as to higher numbers that you can really notice the graininess, the amount of graininess of the picture. The second example really shows the difference of a photo with low ISO to a photo with high ISO. That's why it is really nice to keep the ISO low most of the time and just adjust it when shutter speed and the aperture are out of the options in making the photo brighter. Now let's talk about shutter speed. Now when you take a picture, the camera shutter will open, exposing the camera sensor to the light, and the length of the time it is open affects the photo you're taking. The length of time it is open is the shutter speed. Now, shutter speed is adjusted to capture photos of moving objects, avoiding those blurrings, unless that's what you really want. The shorter time it is open, the clearer the moving subject is. The longer the time it is open, it captures everything that happened while it is open, causing it to be blurry. Slow shutter speeds allow more light into the camera sensor and are used for low light and night photography. Shutter speeds are typically measured in fractions of a second when they are under a second. Examples of shutter speeds is 1 of 15 of a second. Or you can really adjust it like 6 seconds, 10 seconds, depends on what the purpose of the shutter speed adjustment is. On our example here, we have a splash of a water caught in midair and a hummingbird. The photographer used a very quick shutter speed to be able to capture their movements and freeze motion. Our other example is called a long exposure shot. The shutter speed was set to a few seconds. Everything happened in those few seconds were captured. See those streaks of lights? Those are moving cars, and because their motion was captured for a few seconds, they resulted to this. The cars blurred and formed those streaks of lights, from the car lights, resulting in this great photo. And lastly, aperture. When a camera takes a photo, the shutter mechanism opens. Light comes onto the sensor, after which the shutter closes again. When the lens hits the sensor and you have a lens attached to your camera, the light goes through the lens first. Aperture blades determine how much light comes through your lens. So simply put, the aperture controls the amount of light that comes through your lens. If the aperture was set to very low number, it lets a lot of light in and less is in focus, causing to a shallow depth of field. On the other hand, if it was set to a higher number, it funnels in light and a lot are in focus, causing to a deeper depth of field or more things are in focus. Aperture are expressed as a number known as f number or f stop, with the letter f appearing before the number, like f8, f2, f3.5, something like that. And you have noticed this on your camera before. On your LCD screen or viewfinder, your aperture will look something like f slash 2, f slash 3.5, f slash 8, and so on. So f stops are a way of describing the size of aperture for a particular photo. One important part of aperture that confuses beginning photographers more than anything else. This is something you really need to pay attention to and get correct. Small numbers represent large, whereas large numbers represent small apertures. For example, f2.8 is larger than f4 and much larger than f11. Most people find this awkward, since we are used to having larger numbers represent larger values. Nevertheless, this is a basic fact of photography. Remember, the lower the number you see on your camera for the aperture, the larger the opening is. First example here is this flower. The aperture was set to a very low number. It causes a shallow effect, putting only the flower in focus. Our other example shows the difference of two photos with different apertures. Left side with larger opening and the right side with smaller opening. See how everything is clear on the right side? Everything is in focus, compared to the left side, which the background and foreground are blurred and only the mid portion is in focus. Well, that's it. Hopefully you learned something, if not much, from this webinar. It really helped me as a photographer understanding these things. It makes it easier knowing what to adjust on specific situations. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.
Hi everyone, I'm Lee Pelonio, one of the organizer of Design Summit. I hope everyone is doing fine and safe at their respective homes. Before we will start, I would like to thank everyone for joining us and giving time for this multimedia discussion. Just a quick background of myself. I currently work as a graphic designer in Team Marvel, but it's not the Marvel that made the Avengers. As a digital agency based in Newcastle, we specialize in web designing, search engine optimization, and software development for startups and small to medium sized businesses. Aside from that, I also worked in J Performance. It's another agency as well. I worked as a social media coordinator. What I normally do is I manage the sites and the FB and web page, and I also conduct interviews for the applicants. Today, I'm going to discuss about 3D. My presentation will cover my 3D samples and works that I created and how I apply it into the scene, and also my personal experience as a 3D artist. So let's begin. So let's define first what 3D is. 3D means three dimensional or having three dimensions. For example, a cube is three dimensional. It is solid and not thin like a piece of paper. It has volume at top and bottom, left and right sides, as well as front and back. People are, most familiar with 2D graphics in traditional cartoon. 2D graphics are widely used in animation and video games, providing a realistic but, kind of flat view of movement on a screen. 3D graphics provide realistic depth, right? That allows the viewer to see into spaces, notice the movement of light and shadows, and fuller understanding of what's being shown. Right now, let's see what what are exactly the uses of 3D models. 3D models are used for a variety of mediums, including video games, movies, architecture, illustration, engineering, and commercial advertising. The 3D modeling processes, the 3D modeling process produces a digital object capable of being fully animated, making it an essential process for character animation and special effects. With today's technology, you can make 3D models in different ways, right? Using different softwares. Common softwares used for 3D are Blender and Autodesk Maya. Both of them have different functions and features, but if you're asking me if which of these two that I normally used, I used Autodesk Maya. So when I started to learn 3D modeling, I used Maya. And actually one of my friends influenced me to use it because he's good at it. And if there's any problem or I encountered a different error, I can easily ask someone directly. I can easily top him and ask him, "Hey man, I need some help." I'm very comfortable using Maya because of its functions and features that are very suitable to use. So if you're asking me if which one is better, my answer will be both, of course. Maya for me is very organized and UV mapping is great. Blender for me is all in, texture, sculpting, and other stuff. Maya also has those features, but I don't really recommend Maya in sculpting. But this is not only the 3D software that you can use when creating 3D models, just like what we have here. So you have Houdini, Cinema 4D, and Substance Painter, and many more. Actually, this is not the only software that you can use. You can search it, and it depends on you if which type of software you're going to use. So it depends on you if which type of software you're going to use. So once you have the right 3D modeling software, you'll be able to produce stunning designs for your online design, for your online design portfolio, or anything that you would like to create using 3D software. Let's talk about how does 3D modeling work. An artist usually begins by generating some type of primitive like a cube, sphere, or plane. The primitive is just a starting shape to begin modeling. That's where I start as well. So the artist will build upon this basic form and manipulate it using various modeling tools. So for 3D modeling, it's almost always a good idea to start simple and work towards complexity. When I was overwhelmed by the interface. I want to create something, but I don't know where to start. I just look at the blank screen and I don't have an idea what to do, what I'm going to do. So I decided to watch tutorials, and I think this is where the tutorials become useful, and not necessarily for the sake of learning new skills, but for explaining what you're actually doing. So if you don't know what to do or how to start, I suggest start watching tutorials on YouTube and try to follow the steps and instructions, follow along with it. Because you will learn a lot if you're going to watch and listen. And there are, when you're watching tutorials as well, there are tips and functions that you're not familiar with, and then you will find out, or you will have a fully understanding of those features because the person who actually explaining it was able to explain it clearly. What are the uses of those functions? So And if you're studying as well as a multimedia arts or any related to 3D, is of course they will teach you the different techniques as well and tips in creating 3D models. So right now I'm going to show you some of my sample works and what are my struggles in creating 3D assets. I That's my first 3D model. It's an axe. Yes, it's an axe. So it's just simple because that's the first time that I actually used Maya. And I'm not really comfortable to explore or create some complex. Again, what I've mentioned earlier, as what I said earlier, we need to start simple, simple things, simple models. So that's why I chose axe. I started to use Cube for that. And then, so those people who already using, who already creating 3D models, they're familiar with bevel, extrude, and the vertices. So I started with a cube and then I extended the one of the faces and then extrude the left and right side and then bevel some surfaces and manipulate the vertices. That's what I actually do at the time. Did at the time. The assets, I want to explore in applying texture. So yeah, here's my first texture. On the left side, there's no texture, and on the right side, there's already a texture. So as I would like to explore the lights and the emission. So that's why I applied the emission and then the lights at that time. So, and here is another 3D assets. I started to create a complex designs or complex 3D models, just like the trees, the house, and the flower. As you can see, the texture, it's not that flat because I was able to explore the height, the occlusion, and it's not only Maya that I used when I used Maya for 3D modeling and UV mapping, but for the texture, I actually used Substance Painter. Substance Painter is another software for applying texture. But that depends if you were going to use other software for adding texture or you're going to use the same software where you modeled your assets. And as what they said as well, if you're going to start in the field of 3D modeling, you must have a passion for the computer. No doubt about it. Because you spend a lot of time working digitally. And if you don't like working at computer, 3D modeling is probably not your thing. However, if you have an idea that you want to bring to life in the real world or virtual, then 3D modeling may be the right fit for you. So that's another 3D assets. So I applied again the emission, and then I tried to create a different texture, a texture that you can feel something on it. You can feel something. And so after I created those, assets, I decided to, after I created those 3D models, I started to create 3D scenes. I want to create a scene that can make my I started to create 3D scenes. So the Japanese architecture, that's the first scene. Um, I put the material separation and the full texture. So material separation is you need to assign a new material so that not all of your so you can have a variety of texture on every faces, just like this. Because if you're not going to assign new material, all of the faces will be the same. The texture will be the same. So material separation, adding new material is very important when it comes to applying texture. So these are the final rendered scene of the Japanese architecture. As you can see, I added different color grading. That's an LUT. So LUT is it's the same thing with adding filter to your photo. LUT or color lookup table. It's a post processing. It can add some. It can add another feels to this. So that's why I added the different color grading. So rendered scene. Another rendered scene. This is where I applied my digital painting. So yeah, emission. Um, that's a proposed workstation, by the way. So yeah, I actually started to explore lighting, proper lighting, and this is what I like. The fantasy scene. So I explore more in 3D. I was exposed in simulation. Simulation is for like just water, fluid, and particle system. Particle system, just like fire. As you can see, there's a fire, there's smoke. I also added God rays and flying dust at the back of the house. And of course, the flowing water, which I used for it's part of a simulation. So I explore a lot when creating this scene. I really learn a lot in this scene because I expose myself to those type of features in 3D, 3D, in 3D. So these are the other rendered scene, the top view and different angle. I mean, yeah, the different angle of my scene. So I also search for. I also start to learn camera, how camera works in 3D. Because when you're creating a scene, it's the camera is very important. So you need to have a thorough understanding in how camera works in 3D. So for the sci-fi concept, I the only thing that I was able to explore in this scene are the text, the 3D text. So emission, yeah, it's already been discussed earlier. I already added emission earlier, so there's nothing more new to this aside from the text, 3D text. And then another fantasy concept. So I really love this one because the assets is very simple, but the overall feels is great. So yeah, I really love this scene as well. Same thing. I use fire, fire for the for yeah. I actually use fire for this one simulation. The lights and the dust, as you can see, the flying dust on the top of the mushroom. So these are the other rendered scene for the fantasy concept. As you can see, I used the flower earlier, the asset that I created earlier. So I added here, as well as the stone and the trees. I mean the grass. So yeah, and commercial. So for the commercial sample, yeah, that's it. The 3D, the fruits, I did not created those assets, those 3D models. I just get it from someone that is not mine. But that's actually for the commercial. You know what? As you can see, the color fountain, that is not actually a fluid or a simulation. That is just a texture. So I modeled a, I created a model and with same flow with the chocolate fountain, and then I added texture. So normally other people will think that this is a simulation, but it's not. That is just a texture. I just only added a texture to that. And the background, the chocolate background, the flying chocolate background, that is just a clothing. And I just added texture to that. So there are different tricks. That depends on you and how are you going to be creative when creating a scene, right? So just like that, people will normally use simulation for that, but if you can do it through 3D models, or you can create the texture that is looks like realistic, then go. By the way, the software that I used for this are both Maya and Blender. But I highly suggest I highly suggest to use Blender. Blender makes very good choice for some reasons, and one of the primary reason is there is no barrier to entry. Blender can run on any machine. So if you only have access to a computer that is a few years old now, it will still work. Blender is very small, and of course it is completely open source. So the software is free and there are no usage restrictions or anything. So okay, so that's it. Before I will end the discussion, I would like to show you my one of my 3D animation. This is the latest 3D animation that I created. So just a short animation. Um, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's watch it. So that's all for today. I'm so glad to show you my one of my sample works, and I'm so very thankful for today that I was given a chance to speak for the design for this event. And when it comes to, I can only say that when it comes to software, the software is just starting to matter less and less. It is more up to one's resources and personal preference. So that actually depends on you, if which software you're very comfortable to use. So Yeah, that's all for today. I hope you learned something in my discussion, and good luck with exploring 3D. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much.
Alright, so yun na ba yun, Lay? Yun na ba yung last?
Yes, yun na yun.
Ay, di ko naman namalayan. So, sa napakarami kong natutunan ngayon, eh, yun na pala yun yung last speaker natin. So, I was expecting more pa kasi, nakakadala na, nakaka-inspire yung mga
Yes.
itinuturo sa atin, yung mga itinuro nila sa atin to continue in our works, in our endeavors in life, char, ganon. Kasi iba't iba kasi yung mga experiences natin, iba-iba din yung mga natutunan natin in different ways, in different in different ways. So, nakaka-inspire malaman yung yung mga tips na natuturo nila na hindi natin natutunan sa iba. Ganon, new things, yung mga ibang narinig ko dito, Lay.
Yes, tama ka dyan, Kirby. And bawat isa sa atin is may forte talaga, may passion. So, hindi pwedeng lahatin mo na iba't ibang skills ang i-focus mo. Well, good thing about that is, ang dami, kasi if you're good at everything, we will not need each other. Right? Kasi pag kaya mo naman lahat, ano pang purpose ng ibang mga artist kung kaya mo naman i-cover lahat ng mga gagawin? 'Di ba? So, meron talaga tayong fino-focus na ating skills. And, 'di ba? And, ang dami ko talaga natutunan ngayon, Kirby.
Same, same. So,
I
baka
always
meron bang
watch YouTube, iba't ibang mga, forte, but iba talaga pag nakakausap mo at naririnig mo sa ating mga experienced artists, ang dami nilang secrets and mga tips na hindi mo talaga makukuha kahit saan. That is based on their experiences. So, I'm so glad, guys, to meet you. And, we're so happy to share din yung mga skills namin. I mean, yung mga works namin. And we're able to discuss different tips as well. Diba? Right, Kirby?
That's right. So, yung nakaka-inspire makita yung mga works ng iba, and it makes you want to do more, makes you want
Yes.
to proceed. Diba, meron din tayong mga nawawalan tayo ng gana, nauubusan tayo ng idea. And yung mga ganito mga events nakakatulong para sa mga taong nakaka-experience ng ganun parang na burnout. So, at least in some way, nakakatulong tayo sa ating mga kapwa sa ating mga kapwa artists at sa mga aspiring artists na gusto magsimula pa. Um, guys, sino-sino ba magtutulungan din tayo lang mga artists, di ba? So, thank you
Correct.
so much for sharing your own experiences and your artworks to inspire other people.
Yes. And gusto ko lang actually tawagan isa-isa yung mga artist natin for today. Baka meron silang gustong sabihin additional sa yeah, sa ating event na yon. So
Uh,
let's start with Rowie.
my Corona Queen
Hello,
Rowie.
everyone. So all of my audiences out there, all of our audiences out there, do your best. Don't be lazy. Take your time, because I know that you can do it. Because if I can do it, you can. Just kidding. You can do it. That's it.
Alright, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
that,
thank you,
Rowie.
Rowie. And gusto
And
ko lang ding tawagin si Kilo. May gusto ka bang sabihin additional i-add mo sa
Ayan.
event?
Thank you sa lahat ng nag-attend ng ating event. And siguro yung advice ko lang is to keep learning and inspire yourself with other designers too.
Right. Thank you so much, Shilo. Kasi
And
pinto-pinto.
so, thank you for that, Sheila. Jude, ano naman masasabi mo sa ating mga audience before ending this webinar?
Hopefully, they learned a lot from my webinar, and that somehow I was able to help them to get started in the industry of logo making. That's it.
Thank you, Jude.
Sigurado ako meron silang natutunan sa iyo and sa ating mga speakers. How about you, Mabel? Anong gusto mong sabihin sa ating mga audience?
First of all, thank you pala sa mga nanood, no, ngayon sa webinar na ito. And I hope that you guys learn from what I've shared to you. One reminder lang is that all arts are really fun, and all that matter is just whatever that you want to impart to the world, whatever that your heart wants to share to the world. So, yun lang.
Great. Napaka-inspiring ng sinabi niya, Mabel.
How about you, Jonah? What are you going to say to our audience before ending
So,
this?
so I would like to say thank you to everyone who watched the webinar. I hope you've enjoyed. And I've got a tip for those who somehow see themselves stuck in an art block. Well, I just hope that you don't hesitate to ask for help from other artists because that really helps a lot in your art creation process. That's all.
Agree. Totally agree.
True. Di dapat tayo mahiya na humingi ng tulong o
Huwag
gusto niyo
mahiyang magtanong.
hindi to pro hindi to promotion. Totoo yun. Don't hesitate to ask from other people because kaya nga nandyan sila, may mga kaibigan tayo, to ask them to share our problems with, baka may matulong sila. Huwag niyo sarilihinin. Baka di ba solve, you don't know na ang makakatulong pala sa'yo is just around the corner. Ganon.
Tama ka dyan, Kirby.
How about you, Kel?
Hello.
Yes.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope may natutunan kayo sa aming presentation na na-share and ma-apply nyo to sa work nyo in the future. And never give up to your dreams. Yun lang.
Right. True. And ako naman, Lay, no, na-experience ko si Deninto. We all have to start somewhere. Don't compare yourself to other artists. We have our different, we have different styles and we have different pace. So, hindi naman siguro lahat magaling agad. We have to start somewhere nung naging beginners din ang lahat. So, huwag kayong mawala ng pag-asa. You can see art online, everywhere, tapos di may iwasan ma-compare. Wag niyo na masyadong isipin na just focus sa self, sa pag-improve. Iwasan na yung mga negative thoughts kasi hindi nakakatulong yun. Hindi nakakatulong sa pag-grow as an artist. Ikaw, Lay.
So guys, before I will end this online webinar event, gusto ko palang invite ang ating mga viewers to like our page para updated kayo sa aming mga future events. And sa lahat ng sumali, mag-comment lang kayo kasi may bibigay kami mga certificate and pipili kami ng mga viewers na bibigyan din namin ng mga souvenirs. So, always follow our page, guys. And kung meron kayong mga questions, comment down below or you can send us a message. Please like our page, guys, Design Summit. Meron din tayo mga t-shirts na ipopost and that is only for 250 pesos. You can send us a message or you can comment to our post. Okay, well, thank you everyone. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.